The night was alive with energy. The streets buzzed with the usual Friday evening crowd, neon lights flickering on wet asphalt as people hurried to meet friends, grab dinner, or enjoy the first weekend of the month. In the middle of all this, two young men walked side by side with a calmness that contrasted the chaos around them. They looked almost identical, not just in appearance, but in the way they moved and carried themselves. Their height, their build, even the subtle way they smiled at each other made it clear they were twins. But there was something more in their eyes. An alertness, a quiet confidence that drew attention without seeking it. They stepped into a popular bar that was lively with music, laughter, and conversation. The place was warm, filled with the scent of food and drinks and people raising their glasses to the start of the weekend. The twins moved past the crowd with ease, finding a booth near the back. They didn't need to announce themselves. They didn't need anyone to notice them. Yet somehow heads turned. Some people whispered, some just glanced. There was a certain aura about them that made people pause for just a moment. Not because they were famous, but because they carried themselves like people who belonged anywhere yet feared nothing. The twins settled into the booth, sliding into the worn leather seats. One of them glanced at the menu, though they both knew what they wanted. Years of routine, years of discipline, and a shared life experience meant they didn't waste time with unnecessary choices. They ordered a couple of drinks and a plate of something simple, nothing fancy. The bar continued around them, people laughing, talking, and the occasional shout over the music. Yet they remained focused, their conversation quiet, almost indistinguishable to anyone else. But not everyone in the bar appreciated their calm presence. In the corner, two uniformed police officers noticed them. They whispered to each other, a mix of curiosity and suspicion in their tone. These were officers who had walked into countless bars before, but something about these two men made them uneasy. Maybe it was the way they looked at everyone without really looking at them. Maybe it was the quiet confidence that seemed too controlled, too deliberate. Whatever it was, the officers decided to approach. The twins didn't react immediately. They were used to being observed, being judged often unfairly. They had learned long ago how to read people, how to anticipate what might happen next. They stayed calm, their eyes following the officers as they walked toward their booth. The music continued, the chatter continued, yet there was a subtle shift in the energy near them. Patrons began to notice, some out of curiosity, some out of concern. No one spoke, but the tension was there. The first officer, tall and broad-shouldered, leaned slightly toward their booth. His voice was firm, though not yet raised. He asked them what they were doing, where they were from, and why they were there. The questions were standard on the surface, but the tone carried assumptions. The twins responded politely, their voices calm, measured. They answered truthfully, nothing more, nothing less. They did not want to provoke the situation, but they also did not want to give in to fear or intimidation. The second officer stepped closer, trying to assert more control. His eyes scanned the twins up and down, lingering just a bit too long. There was an unspoken challenge in the air, and the twins could feel it immediately. They exchanged a subtle glance, almost imperceptible, and each understood the other without words. They had faced situations like this before, though never exactly like this. Experience had taught them to stay composed, to assess the situation calmly, and to act only when necessary. The first officer continued to question them, now raising his voice slightly, trying to make them uneasy. The twins remained composed. They did not flinch, they did not raise their voices. They answered with courtesy, even offering a small smile to diffuse the tension. The bar's atmosphere grew heavier. Patrons sensing something unusual was unfolding. A few people glanced at their drinks, unsure if they should intervene or stay out of it. The twins' presence, calm and measured, contrasted sharply with the officer's escalating tone. At one point, the taller officer moved closer, his face only inches away from one twin. The twin leaned back slightly but did not retreat. His eyes locked with the officer's, unwavering, unafraid. There was no hostility, yet the authority in the twins' gaze was unmistakable. It was the kind of confidence that comes from years of discipline, of training, of knowing exactly what to do in moments when others might panic. The twins subtly reached for their jackets, not in a threatening way, but to adjust their posture to signal readiness. To any outside observer, it might have seemed like a casual motion, but to anyone who knew how to read body language, it was a sign of alertness. The other patrons in the bar continued to watch quietly, sensing that this was no ordinary disagreement. The tension was palpable yet strangely controlled. It was a standoff without weapons, a test of patience and composure. The officer's voice grew sharper, trying to demand answers to assert control over the situation. The twins remained calm, their responses polite but firm. They did not raise their voices, they did not gesture aggressively. Every word, every movement was calculated to maintain control without escalating violence. There was a rhythm to their calmness, a silent assertion of authority that was not immediately recognized but deeply felt. A few moments passed in silence, broken only by the music and the low murmur of conversations around the bar. The twins' subtle communication continued between them, a glance, a shift in posture, a barely perceptible nod. They were aware of every detail, the officer's stance, the position of nearby patrons, the layout of the bar. Every piece of information was being processed, analyzed, and stored for the right moment. Their training had taught them to always be aware, always be ready, and now it was paying off. Then, one of the twins, the slightly older-looking of the two, leaned forward just a fraction and spoke in a calm, steady voice. He asked the officer if there was a specific concern, a reason for the scrutiny. His tone was neither defensive nor confrontational, merely seeking clarity. The officer, caught off guard by the calm, measured question, hesitated. The twins' demeanor, quiet yet firm, challenged the assumption that they were easy targets or that intimidation would work. It was a subtle shift in the power dynamic, and it did not go unnoticed by anyone watching. The second officer shifted uncomfortably, realizing that their usual tactics were not having the intended effect. The twins' composure was disarming, their confidence not arrogant but grounded in experience. The patrons in the bar began to sense that the situation was delicate, that it could go either way depending on the next move. Everyone seemed to instinctively give a little more space, as if acknowledging that the twins were in control without needing to assert it aggressively. As the tension hovered in the air, the twins continued their quiet conversation, speaking just enough for the officers to hear but not in a way that escalated the situation. They made it clear through tone and body language that they were aware, prepared, and not intimidated. The officers, who had approached thinking they were asserting control, began to realize that they were dealing with people far more capable than they had anticipated. The atmosphere in the bar remained tense, but now there was a hint of mutual recognition, a silent acknowledgement of skill and awareness. The twins' drinks arrived, and one of them lifted his glass in a casual gesture, not to toast but to maintain normalcy, to show that they were not rattled. The simple act of lifting the glass, the casual sip, reinforced their composure. The officers, seeing this, had to pause and reassess. They had expected compliance, perhaps discomfort, maybe even fear. But what they encountered was calm intelligence, readiness, and an unspoken command of the situation. Time seemed to stretch, each second filled with anticipation and subtle observation. The twins remained in control without aggression, their every action deliberate, measured, and precise. They had turned what could have been a moment of intimidation into a quiet demonstration of presence and discipline. Patrons continued to watch, some in awe, some in nervous curiosity, but all aware that something remarkable was unfolding before their eyes. Finally, the taller officer took a step back, lowering his voice slightly, realizing that the twins were not ordinary young men. There was an understanding that brute force or intimidation would not work here. The twins remained seated, calm, almost serene yet fully alert. Their bond, honed through years of shared life and training, gave them an unspoken strength that was visible in their posture, their eyes, and their measured actions. The first part of the night had set the stage, establishing a delicate balance between tension and composure, suspicion and calm. The twins had shown, without a single aggressive move, that they were in control of themselves and the situation around them. The tension in the bar had not eased, even after several minutes of quiet observation. The twins remained in their booth, calm and collected, but the officer's approach had grown sharper. Each question now carried a heavier tone, one that suggested that patience was running thin. The taller officer's eyes narrowed, scanning the twins with a mix of suspicion and frustration. He had expected an easy interaction, one where authority alone could sway compliance, but these two men did not respond the way he anticipated. The twins exchanged a small glance, subtle enough for only them to notice. Without words, they communicated that the situation might escalate, and that caution was necessary. Each movement they made was deliberate. Their hands rested lightly on the table, near their drinks but clearly ready to move if needed. Their posture was relaxed but not careless, projecting calm strength. The bar around them continued in its usual rhythm, unaware of how close the tension had come to boiling over. The second officer, younger and less experienced, tried to assert control by stepping closer. He spoke faster, asking more pointed questions, hoping the twins would stumble or show signs of nervousness. He leaned over the booth, his shadow falling across the table. The twins remained composed, their eyes steady on his. The slight tilt of a head, a soft exhale, even the subtle tap of a finger on the table conveyed to each other and the observant that they were fully aware, fully in command of their reactions. Other patrons began to notice the exchange more clearly. A couple at a nearby table stopped their conversation mid-sentence, watching quietly. A man at the bar adjusted his seat, curious but cautious, sensing the rising tension. There was a hush that hung over the area around the twins' booth, a subtle pull in the air that told people something serious was happening. It was clear to anyone paying attention that the twins were not ordinary patrons, and that the officers might have underestimated them. One twin spoke quietly, his tone calm and measured. He asked the officer if there was a specific reason for his suspicion, if there was a concern he needed to address. The officer faltered, caught off guard by the politeness and precision of the question. He had expected defensiveness, perhaps irritation, but not this level of composure. The twins' calmness was a shield, and it was difficult for the officer to find a foothold in the interaction. The other twin leaned back slightly, maintaining eye contact with the second officer, silently signaling readiness without aggression. The officers began to realize they were not dealing with ordinary young men. Each response from the twins was measured, clear, and deliberate. There was no hesitation, no nervous twitch, no defensive posture. Every action, every word carried the weight of experience, and the officers felt a subtle shift in the dynamic. What had started as a routine check was now a careful balance between authority and understanding. The twins were not only aware of the officers' intentions, but also in control of their own reactions. As the questioning continued, one of the twins subtly reached into his jacket pocket. He did not make a show of it, did not draw attention, but it was enough for the other twin to notice. In a glance, they communicated silently that they had the situation under control, that their backup was ready if needed, and that they were prepared for any escalation. This silent communication was a reflection of years of shared experience and intense training. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a casual movement, but to the twins, it was an essential step in maintaining readiness. The officers, unaware of the twins' true roles, grew more aggressive in their approach. They leaned closer, their voices rising slightly, attempting to dominate the interaction. The twins remained calm, answering each question politely but firmly. Their words were carefully chosen to neither escalate nor submit, maintaining a delicate balance that kept the situation from spiraling. Patrons continued to watch, their curiosity mixed with concern. It was evident that this was no ordinary confrontation. The twins' awareness extended beyond just the officers. They observed the entire environment, the positioning of the bar stools, the exits, the placement of people nearby. Every detail was noted and processed, a mental map forming that would help them navigate any sudden developments. Their calm demeanor was not ignorance, but a reflection of their training and experience, the ability to remain composed while fully assessing a situation. At one point, the taller officer attempted to assert authority by placing a hand on the table, leaning in closer. The twin met his gaze evenly, neither flinching nor moving away. There was no hostility, but there was a clear understanding. This was as close to a line as the officer could approach without consequence. The twins' posture and unwavering eye contact communicated control and confidence, a silent but unmistakable message that he was not intimidated. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, realizing that traditional methods of intimidation would not work here. The twins' composure and quiet confidence disrupted the usual hierarchy. Patrons watched with a mix of tension and fascination. The twins' behavior conveyed that they were calm yet prepared, confident yet not confrontational. aware of the stakes but in complete control of their own actions. It was a subtle display of authority that did not rely on words or aggression. The twins continued to answer questions politely, each sentence measured and precise. They maintained eye contact, but it was not challenging. It was steady and clear, conveying control and awareness. Their subtle gestures, adjusting a sleeve, shifting slightly in the booth, tilting a head, communicated to each other and to any trained observer that they were ready for any potential escalation. The situation, while tense, remained controlled because of their presence and calm professionalism. Patrons around the booth remained quiet, sensing the delicate balance. The music played on, the chatter continued elsewhere, but around the twins there was a palpable tension. The officers had underestimated them, and it was becoming increasingly clear that these were not ordinary young men. Every reaction was calculated, every movement deliberate, and the twins' ability to remain calm under pressure was extraordinary. The taller officer finally asked a question that hinted at impatience. The twins answered without hesitation, their tone calm and respectful. Their composure forced the officer to pause and reconsider his approach. The subtle power dynamic had shifted. What had begun as a routine check was now a complex interaction requiring patience and awareness. The twins' calmness and quiet authority made it clear that any rash action would be unwise. As the interaction continued, one twin gently reached for his drink, taking a slow, deliberate sip. The motion was casual, almost indifferent, but it reinforced their calm demeanor. The officer's aggression, once sharp, began to soften slightly as he realized he was facing two individuals who were completely aware, completely prepared, and entirely unafraid. The twins' presence, their poise, and their subtle but constant vigilance conveyed a silent warning. They were not to be underestimated. The second officer, less experienced, tried to regain control by asking more direct questions, hoping to catch them off guard. Yet the twins responded with the same quiet confidence, maintaining calmness and composure. Patrons watched closely, sensing the subtle interplay of power, awareness, and discipline. The twins' behavior demonstrated a mastery of control that few could match, a balance between calmness and readiness that was both impressive and intimidating. Time seemed to slow, each second filled with observation, calculation, and careful response. The twins' subtle gestures, an exchange of a glance, a slight tilt of the head, a measured shift in posture, communicated volumes to each other and to any perceptive observer. The officers were beginning to understand that their assumptions were incorrect, that these men were not ordinary and that caution was necessary. Finally, the twins decided it was time to signal a slight escalation. Not in aggression, but in authority. One twin's hand moved subtly, activating a small device that communicated silently with their colleagues outside the bar. It was precise, discreet, and effective. No one around noticed, but for the twins it was a reassurance that backup was aware and ready if needed. Their calm demeanor remained intact, but there was now an added layer of confidence, an unseen support that further reinforced their control over the situation. The officers, still unaware of the twins' true roles, continued their questioning, but their tone had shifted slightly. The earlier sharpness had dulled, replaced by a cautious hesitation. They had sensed that these were not ordinary men, and that any misstep could have unforeseen consequences. The twins, fully aware of this, continued to respond with calm precision, maintaining control of their reactions and subtly guiding the interaction toward resolution. As the minutes passed, the tension remained, but the twins' composed presence began to influence the energy in the bar. Patrons sensed the balance, the delicate interplay of authority, calmness, and awareness. The twins' ability to remain unshaken, prepared and alert without aggression was a quiet display of skill and intelligence. It was a demonstration of how discipline, training, and awareness could navigate even the most tense situations without unnecessary conflict. The interaction had reached a point where both officers, consciously or unconsciously, began to step back, reassessing the situation. They had expected routine compliance, perhaps discomfort, but instead they faced calm intelligence, quiet authority, and a subtle display of control. The twins remained seated, poised, and prepared, fully aware of their surroundings and ready to act if needed. The tension had not disappeared, but it had shifted, guided entirely by the twins' presence and composure. The scene in the bar had transformed from a confrontation into a delicate standoff, where awareness, discipline, and subtle authority dictated the pace and outcome. The air in the bar had grown heavy, thick with anticipation. The music continued, faint in the background as if the space itself held its breath. The twins remained seated in their booth, calm and collected, their presence commanding the room without a word. Patrons around them watched closely, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. The officers, on the other hand, were becoming increasingly frustrated. Their attempts at intimidation met with an unshakable calm that they did not expect. The taller officer leaned closer, his voice firm but tinged with uncertainty. He asked again why the twins were there, what they were doing, and why they seemed so unaffected by his presence. The twins exchanged a subtle glance, an unspoken conversation passing between them. They had been patient, measured, and silent up until now, but it was clear that the situation could escalate if it was not addressed soon. One twin leaned slightly forward, his movements deliberate and slow, a signal that it was time to reveal who they were. In one smooth motion, the twin reached into his jacket and pulled out a small badge and identification card. The gesture was calm, controlled, and confident. He held it out in front of him, showing the officer without hesitation. The badge bore the letters that would immediately command recognition for those who knew: FBI. The officer blinked, caught off guard, his tone faltering as he tried to process the revelation. The younger officer, who had been more aggressive, stepped back slightly, his expression shifting from suspicion to surprise. The twins' voices were steady as they introduced themselves by name, their identities now clear. They did not shout. They did not demand respect. They simply presented the truth, the reality that the officers had been unaware of. The bar fell into a hush, the music seeming to fade as patrons turned their attention to the booth. Everyone could feel the shift, the subtle but undeniable change in energy. These were not ordinary young men. They were trained federal agents, capable, aware, and entirely professional. The taller officer struggled to maintain his composure. He had approached with authority, expecting compliance, and instead he found himself facing individuals who were trained to handle far more dangerous situations than a bar confrontation. He glanced at his partner, who was still holding back, unsure of how to proceed. The twins remained calm, their eyes steady, their posture relaxed yet alert. They were not here to escalate, not here to assert dominance. They were here to ensure clarity and safety. A few patrons began to murmur quietly, expressing surprise and curiosity. Some whispered to each other, trying to piece together the scene they were witnessing. The twins did not react to the whispers, their focus entirely on the officers. They understood the delicate balance of authority and professionalism. They were not looking for recognition or praise. They were simply handling a situation that could have turned chaotic, ensuring that it remained under control. One of the twins spoke gently, his tone calm and authoritative. He explained that they were FBI agents on leave, enjoying a quiet evening, and that there had been a misunderstanding. The words were simple, clear, and direct. There was no arrogance, no boastfulness, just a factual explanation delivered with confidence. The officers listened, their expressions a mix of relief, embarrassment, and newfound respect. They had underestimated these men, and now the truth demanded acknowledgement. The tension began to ease slightly as the officers processed the revelation. The taller officer took a step back, his posture less aggressive, his voice softer. He muttered a cautious apology, acknowledging that their assumptions had been incorrect. The younger officer mirrored his partner's shift, stepping back and lowering his tone. The twins nodded slightly, their calm demeanor reinforcing that the situation was now under control. It was a delicate resolution, handled with quiet professionalism rather than force. The twins' presence continued to command respect, not through intimidation, but through a display of calm competence. They had handled a potentially volatile situation with poise, awareness, and subtle authority. Patrons who had been watching closely now felt a sense of relief, mixed with admiration. The scene that could have escalated into conflict had been diffused through intelligence, discipline, and composure. The twins' ability to maintain control without aggression was a testament to their training and experience. After a few moments, one twin relaxed slightly, leaning back into the booth. He took a sip of his drink, a casual gesture that contrasted with the intensity of the previous interaction. The other twin mirrored him, their synchronized movements subtle yet noticeable. The officers, still adjusting to the revelation, gave a final nod and stepped away. The atmosphere in the bar began to return to normal, the background music gradually becoming more prominent as conversations resumed. Yet the memory of the encounter lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. The twins exchanged a quiet glance, a mixture of understanding and shared relief. They had handled the situation without escalation, maintaining professionalism and authority in a context where assumptions and bias could have led to conflict. They understood the delicate balance between revealing their identity and ensuring safety, and they had navigated it flawlessly. The experience was a reminder of the unique challenges they faced in their roles. Even during moments of leisure, they spoke briefly, in low tones, about the importance of remaining composed, about reading the situation, and about the need for vigilance. Their words were not meant for anyone else to hear, but their conversation reflected the shared understanding that had guided them through the encounter. The bond between them, forged through shared life experiences and rigorous training, allowed them to communicate silently and efficiently, maintaining coordination even in tense situations. As the night continued, the twins remained at the booth, enjoying their drinks and observing the bar without drawing attention to themselves. Patrons continued their activities, some still stealing glances, others returning to their conversations. The twins' presence was calm yet commanding, a subtle reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that composure and awareness often carried more weight than aggression or assumption. The revelation of their FBI identities did not bring arrogance or bravado. Instead, it brought a quiet authority, a demonstration of how discipline, training, and awareness could navigate a situation that might have otherwise become volatile. The twins had turned an encounter that began with suspicion into a controlled resolution, showing the power of calm professionalism and intelligence. Their actions were a reflection of both their roles and their character, a balance of strength, humility, and experience. Throughout the rest of the evening, the twins remained attentive, maintaining awareness without disrupting the environment around them. They interacted politely with the bar staff, answered casual questions with calm precision, and ensured that the atmosphere remained comfortable for everyone. Their presence was a study in quiet control, a lesson in how confidence and composure could influence a situation far more effectively than force or confrontation. The officers eventually left the bar, their earlier assumptions replaced by a mixture of respect and humility. The twins watched them go, understanding the significance of what had just transpired. They had navigated a potentially tense interaction with skill and poise, turning suspicion into understanding without conflict. It was a reminder of the constant vigilance required in their roles, even in moments of apparent leisure. As they prepared to leave the bar themselves, the twins reflected on the night. The incident had reinforced the importance of patience, observation, and controlled responses. It had shown how quickly assumptions could lead to tension, and how calm, deliberate action could resolve situations safely and effectively. They walked out together, their steps confident and measured, blending into the night as two ordinary men on the surface, but carrying the weight of extraordinary responsibility and experience within them. The night outside the bar was cooler, the hum of the city calming after the earlier tension. The twins walked side by side down the street, their movements relaxed but deliberate. Each step was measured, each glance purposeful, yet they were no longer tense. The confrontation had ended, but its impact lingered. The memory of suspicion, the sudden shift when they revealed their identities, and the realization that appearances can mislead, these thoughts lingered in their minds. As they moved away from the crowd, one twin spoke quietly, reflecting on how often situations like this occurred. He mentioned how their roles as FBI agents put them in positions where people made assumptions before knowing the facts. It wasn't always dangerous, but it was always a test of composure, judgment, and presence. His brother nodded, understanding completely. Their lives demanded constant awareness, even in moments of relaxation, because perception often conflicted with reality. They found a quieter corner near a small park, the soft glow of street lamps illuminating their path. Here they could talk without drawing attention. The conversation turned to the officers and the way the encounter had unfolded. The twins discussed how patience and calm had been the key, how responding with composure rather than aggression had allowed the situation to resolve peacefully. They noted the officers' reactions, the subtle signs of realization and surprise, and how quickly tension could be diffused when approached correctly. The twins were mindful of how the bar patrons had witnessed the scene. They didn't dwell on the attention, but acknowledged that the moment was a silent lesson for those present. Their actions had demonstrated that discipline, observation, and calm intelligence could prevent escalation. It was a quiet but powerful reminder of how to handle tense interactions without unnecessary force. An example set without words for those who were watching. One twin mentioned the importance of understanding human behavior, of reading subtle cues in posture, tone, and expression. They had learned over years of training and experience that even small movements could reveal intentions, whether in an everyday scenario or during a critical mission. Their calm, controlled response had shifted the power dynamic, not through threat but through awareness and quiet authority. The other twin agreed, noting how often situations could spiral if assumptions went unchecked, highlighting the importance of controlled intervention. As they walked further, they reflected on the broader implications. The night had reinforced the challenges they faced in society, the biases people carried, and how easily judgment could be clouded by appearance alone. The twins were no strangers to this reality. Their experience in the FBI had taught them that awareness, composure, and patience were as important as any tactical skill. They spoke in measured tones about the lessons learned, not with anger, but with understanding and a desire to stay prepared. They paused briefly near a quiet street corner, listening to the distant sounds of the city. One twin looked around thoughtfully, observing the environment even in the moment of calm. He noted how people moved through the night, the subtleties of their expressions, and how awareness of surroundings could make all the difference. His brother mirrored the observation, silently acknowledging that vigilance was a constant requirement, even when the immediate danger had passed. The conversation turned to the officers themselves. The twins reflected on the embarrassment and surprise the men had felt upon learning the truth. They did not judge or mock, but considered it an opportunity for understanding. The officers' assumptions had been based on perception, not fact, and the twins' controlled response had not only resolved the situation, but provided an indirect lesson about professionalism, patience, and the importance of gathering complete information before acting. They continued down the street, their pace steady, their demeanor calm. The earlier adrenaline had faded, replaced by a quiet awareness. The twins discussed how moments like these, though seemingly small, were reflective of larger societal dynamics. How people reacted, how assumptions influenced behavior, and how controlled responses could make all the difference. It was a reminder that their work was not only about direct action, but also about understanding human nature and guiding outcomes subtly, sometimes without anyone even realizing it. The twins reached a familiar corner, a small cafe that remained open late. They decided to sit briefly, ordering simple drinks. The cafe was quiet, filled with a few late-night visitors. Here, away from the bar and the confrontation, they could reflect more deeply. One twin spoke about the importance of decompression, of processing experiences, and discussing the subtleties of interactions to stay grounded. The other agreed, noting how reflection reinforced lessons and prepared them for future challenges. As they sipped their drinks, they spoke about the incident in the bar, not with frustration but with analytical clarity. They noted how calm composure, careful observation, and subtle communication had allowed them to maintain control. They discussed how these principles applied not only in law enforcement, but in everyday life. Their conversation was thoughtful, deliberate, and deeply human, reflecting the blend of professional experience and personal insight that shaped their perspective. The twins shared a moment of quiet laughter, a brief release of the tension that had built earlier. It was a human moment, simple and unpretentious, reminding them that despite the seriousness of their roles, they were still brothers navigating life together. They exchanged anecdotes, small observations about people, and reflections on the subtle dynamics of human behavior. The night had provided lessons, and they embraced them, acknowledging both the challenges and the growth that came from experience. Finishing their drinks, the twins prepared to leave. They thanked the cafe staff with warmth and respect, maintaining the same composed demeanor they had exhibited all evening. Outside, the city felt quieter, calmer yet alive with the usual rhythm. They walked together side by side, their steps in sync, their awareness still present but their tension eased. They knew the night had been more than a simple outing. It had been a lesson in patience, observation, and the quiet power of composure. As they reached their car, they paused briefly, looking at each other. The encounter at the bar, the tension, the revelation of their identities, it had all been handled flawlessly, without aggression, without unnecessary conflict. They shared a brief nod, acknowledging the effectiveness of their approach and the value of maintaining control in difficult situations. The night had reinforced their understanding of both human nature and their own capabilities. They drove home in silence, the city lights reflecting off the windshield, thoughts processing quietly. The experience would remain in their minds as a reference point, a reminder of how composure and awareness could turn potential conflict into resolution. The twins knew that their roles demanded constant vigilance but also a deep understanding of human behavior and the ability to act with calm authority. The night had been a confirmation of that principle. Arriving home, they parked and stepped out, the cool night air welcoming them. They moved inside, each taking a moment to reflect before beginning the routine of settling in. They spoke quietly about the lessons of the evening, about patience, composure, and subtle influence. Their conversation was thoughtful, their reflections precise, a testament to the depth of experience and the bond that allowed them to navigate life's challenges together. As they prepared for the night, the twins knew that this experience would stay with them, not as a source of pride or triumph, but as a reminder of the importance of calm, of observation, and of the human capacity to handle tense situations with dignity and control. They had faced suspicion, potential conflict, and societal assumptions, and had emerged with the situation resolved and the lessons learned, ready to carry forward into whatever challenges the next day might bring. The morning light filtered gently through the blinds as the twins began their day. The events of the previous night still lingered in their minds, a mixture of reflection and quiet satisfaction. They moved through their morning routine with calm efficiency, each action deliberate and intentional. There was no rush, no sense of chaos, just a measured approach to the day ahead. The memory of the bar incident remained vivid, a reminder of how quickly assumptions could lead to tension and how composure and awareness could prevent conflict. As they prepared breakfast, they discussed the night not with frustration or anger, but with analysis and insight. They spoke about the officers, about the subtle changes in tone and body language, and how awareness and calm authority had shifted the situation. They reflected on the importance of observation, of patience, and of knowing when to act and when to remain composed. These were lessons that applied not only in their professional lives, but also in everyday human interactions. The conversation turned to the broader implications of the incident. The twins recognized how often people judged based on appearance, how assumptions could lead to unnecessary tension, and how awareness and calm could transform situations. They spoke quietly, thoughtfully, acknowledging the subtle power dynamics that had played out and the value of maintaining control without aggression. Their words were deliberate, measured, and deeply human, reflecting experience, insight, and empathy. After breakfast, they prepared for the day's work. Though it was technically their day off, the responsibilities of their roles required vigilance and readiness. They reviewed notes, updated communications, and checked in with colleagues, maintaining awareness without urgency. Their professionalism and calm efficiency were evident in every action, a reflection of years of experience and training. The events of the night had reinforced their understanding of human behavior, and they applied those lessons even in the quiet routine of the morning. As the day progressed, they spoke briefly about the personal impact of the incident. It had been more than just a confrontation. It had been a test of patience, perception, and composure. They reflected on how easily misunderstandings could escalate, and how important it was to remain aware and measured. The twins shared moments of quiet laughter, humanizing the experience and reminding each other that, despite the intensity of their work, they were still brothers navigating life together. They considered the lessons learned for others as well. They discussed how calm authority, observation, and controlled responses could influence interactions in everyday life. They thought about the patrons who had witnessed the bar incident, about the officers, and about anyone who might benefit from seeing how composure could diffuse tension. Their reflections were thoughtful and measured, grounded in experience and empathy. illustrating the subtle power of presence and awareness. In the afternoon, they took a walk through a nearby park. The world moved around them, people walking dogs, children playing, couples talking quietly. The twins observed, noting the subtleties of human behavior, the way people moved, how they interacted, the little gestures that revealed intention and emotion. These observations were natural and casual, part of their ongoing awareness, but also a reflection of their ability to remain grounded and attentive in any environment. They paused at a bench, sitting side by side, their conversation quiet and reflective. They spoke about the importance of empathy, understanding, and patience. They recognized that not every tense situation could be resolved immediately, but that calm awareness and measured responses often prevented escalation. Their discussion was human-centric, focused on understanding others and navigating social dynamics with composure and insight. The twins also reflected on the value of trust and coordination. Their ability to communicate silently, to understand each other's cues, and to act with unspoken agreement had been critical the night before. They discussed how this bond, forged over years of shared experiences, allowed them to navigate tense situations safely and effectively. Their conversation highlighted not only professional skill, but also the deep personal connection that guided their actions. As the sun began to set, they returned home, carrying the calm awareness of the day into the evening. They prepared a simple meal, speaking occasionally about the nuances of human behavior and the importance of patience and observation. They reflected on the bar incident not as a source of tension, but as an opportunity to internalize lessons and reinforce the value of composure. Their discussion was thoughtful and grounded, human-centric, and filled with insight derived from experience. Later, they settled into a quiet evening routine, checking messages, reviewing plans for upcoming work, and reflecting quietly. They spoke about the unpredictability of life, the importance of staying aware, and the need to approach every interaction with composure and understanding. Their words were deliberate, measured, and thoughtful, emphasizing the value of experience, empathy, and professional discipline. The lessons from the night remained present, influencing their actions and mindset. As night fell, they prepared for rest, reflecting on the day and the events that had shaped it. They considered the importance of vigilance, patience, and observation in all aspects of life, not just in their professional roles. They spoke briefly, sharing insights and reflections, reinforcing the lessons learned and the importance of calm composure. Their conversation was quiet, human, and grounded, emphasizing reflection, understanding, and preparation for the future. Finally, they settled into bed, the city quiet around them, the day ending in calm. The night had been a reminder of the delicate balance between perception and reality, of the value of composure, observation, and awareness, and of the subtle ways in which human behavior could be influenced through calm authority. The twins had navigated tension, revealed truth, and reflected on lessons, leaving them prepared for the challenges ahead. Their bond, their training, and their awareness had guided them, and as sleep came, they carried with them the quiet confidence of experience, readiness, and human understanding.